Hey there, this is Paul, and I finished up my Andy character inside the Starcraft II Editor, so I'm going to go ahead and show that off today. While this is loading, I'll go ahead and give a quick rundown of his abilities so that those not familiar with him will understand what you're seeing. His Q ability is Disintegrate, which is a targeted fireball ability that refunds its mana cost if the ability itself kills a unit. On W, we have Incinerate, which is a big cone of flame that shoots in the direction of your cursor. On E, we have Energy Shield. And I know League of Legends Annie has Molten Shield, but I couldn't find a good model for it, so I went Energy instead. It gives him damage resistance and deals magic damage to enemies each time they use a basic attack against him. And on R, we have Summon Tibbers. This is a ground-targeted ability which summons Tibbers, his pet Ultralisk, and he is summoned in with an explosion that deals damage to all enemies hit by it. Tibbers can be controlled by the player and has a basic attack as well as a fire aura that pulses each second, dealing damage to enemies near him. Lastly, Annie's passive is Pyromania, and the way it works is that each time he casts a spell, he gains a stack. Once he's at 4 stacks, his next offensive spell stuns anything it hits on top of dealing its damage. The stacks reset to 0 whether or not anything is stunned, but it requires an offensive ability, so it does not proc. It doesn't reset off of Energy Shield. So for the mechanics, I'm going to go ahead and start with his passive since it behaves a little differently on a couple of his abilities. For Pyromania, each spell that is cast will add a stack to the buff, which you can see right there. However, due to the limitations of the system, you cannot actually change icons for buffs based on how many stacks it has. So if this was just a singular buff that went up to 5 stacks, the icon would never change. To work around this, I've actually set up an effect set that removes the existing buff and applies the next one up whenever he casts a spell. And it does this in order of highest to lowest. And what I mean by that is it'll see if 4 is there and remove it and reset to 0. Then it'll see if 3 is there, remove 3 and set to 4, so on and so forth. And it goes from highest to lowest so that it only goes one step at a time. At a maximum of 4 stacks, the buff stops incrementing on Electric Shield. See, we're at 4 stacks here. If I use Electric Shield, it doesn't do anything. But if I use Incinerate again, the buff goes away. And an aura actually appears on Annie, such a visual cue that the effect itself is ready. The little red glowy thing. And then I will go ahead and show off the stun stuff. So, as you can see right here, if I use Disintegrate on something, this does some damage. But if I do it with the stun up, it actually stuns the ability and he can't attack. Okay. So, Disintegrate is a targeted fireball effect that deals damage to the selected target. The interesting part of this ability is the on-kill mechanic, and to get that working, I have Disintegrate apply a buff to the target that lasts an extremely short period of time, in this case a thousandth of a second. This buff has an on-death effect of returning 100 mana to the caster, which is Annie. It's the only ability that actually costs energy. Well, energy because there's no mana in this version, but yeah, it's the only ability that costs energy to demonstrate this fact. And the way it works is it applies the buff and then it applies the damage, and since the buff lasts so long, only the damage from Disintegrate itself actually triggers it. And to handle Pyromania, the ability itself has 2 different missiles it can launch, one with a stun effect and one without. And it uses a validator based on how many stacks of Pyromania are present to determine which to fire. So if there isn't 4 stacks, it uses a regular missile. If there are 4 stacks, it uses the stun missile. And I'll show you here. So you can see the energy drops to 200 and starts recharging normally. But if I use it to kill something, it immediately goes back up by 100. And again, the stun effect. Incinerate is just a cone-shaped damage effect and a cone-shaped stun when Pyromania is up. That uses a validator to ensure... No, sorry. Yeah, it uses a validator again to ensure it only fires at 4 stacks of Pyromania. The fun part here is actually making the visual effect of it, because the damage is just a cone surge. It just applies damage in that triangular area in front of him. The visual effect itself, I looked around in a couple of forums to figure out that you could use a persistent effect to fire off a bunch of dummy search effects that are offset from the caster in different positions. So each one of those little fire explosions that you saw is actually a search effect going off. And the way it works is you can actually use offsets to position those in different ways and creating custom shapes. And so once the shape is set up, you just add a visual effect that fires on that dummy surge, and all of a sudden you have a really cool looking flame wall effect. It's kind of hard to tell because it goes so fast, but this one actually expands forward from the character. And again, the stun effect, showing that stuns everything. Electric Shield is a 5-second buff that has an on-damage taken effect that deals 20 damage back to whatever is hitting him. As you can see, they're all taking damage and blowing up because they're hitting me. It also reduces the incoming damage that Andy takes. And now I'm up into the Zerglings. So as you can see here, Andy takes absolutely no damage when he has the shield up. But you can see him taking a little bit of damage when he doesn't have it up. So the shield, like I said, goes to 0 because of the damage reduction from the shield itself. Let's see if I can get out of here. Too many Zerglings. Okay. And the last ability is Summon Tibbers. And Summon Tibbers is a ground target ability that does a small circle of damage, as well as a summon effect for Timbers. This is Tibbers. He is an Ultralisk, and he is awesome. And as you can see, there's a little red pulsey effect. That's actually the fire aura going off and damaging everything around him. And the way I made him a temporary unit, because in League of Legends, Tibbers is a temporary unit, the fire aura only lasts for 10 seconds. And so when that effect actually ends, it takes Tibbers with it. This way he's actually temporary, and also the fire aura deals splash damage to everything around him, and it's kind of a neat little way of making it all in one. Let's get cooking. And like everything else, if you summon him with that, it stuns everything around him. And as you can see, everything near him is taking a little bit of damage. Actually, those are a little bit farther apart than the Zerglings, so it's kind of hard to see. But yeah, the fire aura is dealing damage to everything around on top of actually his swinging. I actually had to go and make a custom weapon for him so that it would only hit one target instead of everything, to more show off the fact that the AoE is actually doing damage to everything. And as you can see, like, because I've been swinging at that and that one blew up. Let's do this. So yeah, thanks for watching.